Art can mean different things to different people. For me, it's all about the joy of creating. So if you draw, paint, write, dance, sing, craft, play air guitar, or even sculpt using nothing but mashed potatoes, consider yourself an artist and join the conversation. For the next half hour, meet the artist, learn about their inspiration, and enjoy the beauty of creativity. Welcome to Art Talk with John Cole Artist. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Art Talk with John Cole Artist. And the strangest thing, Heather, when I went to unmute myself, I almost hit the remove button. Now, had I done that, this would have been your show completely tonight. So I am certainly glad I didn't do that. Well, happy Halloween, everyone. To those that
Yes.
are watching live, happy Halloween. And to those that are watching the replay, well, happy Halloween yesterday or the following day or 2 days ago or whatever it is. But either way, I hope you guys are going to have a safe Halloween tonight. It's not quite dark here yet in Drake, Massachusetts, but right after the show tonight, my guess is I will be sitting outside hoping to get at least one person. But
Are
tonight,
you living in the country or are you kind of in a city area?
well, Drake is actually more of a rural country community. That we do live in a neighborhood where there are houses, but I think there might only be I think only one set of children live in the neighborhood. And I think that because the communities are so spread apart here, I think last year we had 5 people that stopped by. So it was very, very minimal. Now, we lived in California, on the other hand. We lived in Hercules, and everybody from Richmond would drive their kids over to Hercules because it was much safer in our area. And man, we used to get kids crawling all over the place. It was amazing. It was amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah. So they don't really do much Halloween-ish stuff here where I live in the South. It's a smaller area. A lot of it's like trunk or treats, but
Oh, yeah, yeah.
yeah, so I don't get any trick or treaters. I kind of miss it.
Yeah, there's something fun about doing that. Especially as a kid, we used to ride our bicycles to a subdivision that they had built. I don't know, geez, in the late 70s, early 80s, and we would plan that thing out. We know what streets to go down. We would take, and we would use, back in the day, we would use pillowcases to collect candy, and we would come home with some pillowcases full of candy. It was pretty good.
Yeah, that was back in the day too when I had a lot of fun when I was probably like 11, 12, 13, getting a little bit older. I
Yeah.
remember it would be all night. It'd be like till 11 o'clock. We'd just
Oh,
be
right.
up and down neighborhoods.
Yeah. Yeah, me and a friend of mine, we'd ride our bicycles, and of course, we'd always be on the lookout for cute girls too. But that was that age. It's what we did. You know what I mean? Anyway, folks, Heather Doran is an author. She's a speaker. She's a mentor, and if you go to her website, she is a thriving money goddess.
Yes.
And and you also host your own podcast.
Yes, I do. I'm not as consistent as you, John.
Well, you should be, because I've listened to your episodes, and when I was driving back from Atlanta there 2 weeks ago, I listened to the interview you had with Allison Roberts, and what a really, really good job you did of not only
Aw.
driving the conversation, which is important, but also having a dialogue. So it wasn't a monologue like some people tend to do, but it really was a legitimate conversation that you had. And I thought it was really, really well done. So I certainly do encourage you to keep that up, because I think there's a lot of potential there. I think you're a natural at it.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I obviously, I doubted myself at times. Like, should I keep doing this?
Right, right. Yeah, I know with mine, it's interesting that I do have some folks like Christine, my wife's on, she says, hello,
Hi,
beautiful souls.
Christine.
Hi, Christine. Uh, but what I'm finding is a lot of the folks that watch my podcast, because 5 o'clock, admittedly, is kind of a weird time on the East Coast. You know, a lot of people work in Boston, for example, and having worked there and having to do that commute, 5 is not a really easy time. However, I do have some folks that are very consistent, and I appreciate that. And then I do see that there are folks that, watch the reruns on Spotify. So, um, that in and of itself is pretty cool. To get
Yeah.
messages like yours out there is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean it's a great way to market.
Mhm.
And also, I mean, coming into 2023, that was the big thing that marketing professionals said is listen, like podcasts are this next thing, the next way that is really going to help you get your message out there, because they're not super saturated and they can be very specific to topics. And it really does help people get a flow and a sense and a vibe from you, especially if you're a business owner and you want to start marketing yourself. It really does help people get a flavor and a sense of what you're doing, because really and truly, they get on the phone with you or they want to hire you. They really want to kind of understand, like, what your sense is, and, like,
Right.
'cause, like, I think I heard Allison's podcast that she did with you recently, and she talked about how, everybody is doing the same thing, but, I think the big thing with that is that we have to put our own unique flavor to it, and we all have a unique signature that we resonate to, and people they'll respond to your unique signature. And so we always want to think like, oh, well, somebody's doing a podcast or somebody's doing what I'm doing, but we tend to forget that, like, we are literally all very unique and we have a unique signature,
Right.
attracting, whether it's like a love interest, whether it's friends, it's collaboratives, whatever it is, business partners, those types of things. You carry a unique signature.
Right. And not only that, but we all do have our own stories, and even if I think the podcast, a podcast is a specific area. Like this is something that came up with me recently with this podcast. It's oh, and by the way, Karen Albert, she writes, "You are both naturals."
Oh, hi,
That's
Karen.
sweet, Karen. Thank you. Um, no, what I'm saying is that yeah, not only do we have our own signatures, but the stories themselves, I think, when they when they get integrated, because that's what I noticed about your podcast is you integrate your story in with the message that you speak about, right? You're focused on money and things like that. Um, but because we all have our own unique stories, I think what happens, and what I'm seeing with this podcast, Art Talk, is that I'm able to really make it whatever I need it to be, because that idea of art really encompasses everything.
It
You
does.
yeah, you have this financial background, but there is an art to money, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting because I actually, gosh, I remember in my college days, I took a college class. You'll find this funny. I had to take a prerequisite class, and I've never told anybody this story. So you're getting the firsthand account.
Awesome.
I had to take a prerequisite class, and one of them was writing. It was like creative writing or something like that. And here I am, an accounting student, I'm this like analytical mind. And I remember writing some things, and it was in the class this was like 20 years ago. And I remember my very last writing assignment was basically something to the effect of, like, this has been a great time. Like, I get this whole creative thing y'all are trying to do, but I'm gonna stick to my logical, like, I'm putting this, I'm not gonna pursue this anymore.
Mhm.
And so I was thinking about that the other day, because we just released the book and, we've done Seeking and everything. And I'm like, oh my God, isn't that so funny how this stuff just comes full cycle,
Mm.
that we all have these things inside of us all
Right.
along.
Yeah, it's part of that individuality, and that's really, I think, what draws people to you. It's what draws people to me and everybody else that, that does a podcast or writes something, even if it's a magazine article. It's there's that piece of you, or even fiction for the most part. There's a piece of you. Well, I mean, it's coming from your mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And anything that comes from your mind inevitably will be part of who you are. So yeah, the book, for those that don't know, it came out I think in early September, mid-September is when they released the Kindle version, and now the paperback version is available on Amazon. It's Behind the Power. Um, and I forgot the
Your
subtitle.
success is waiting.
Your success is waiting on you. That's right. Geez, I should remember that since I'm in the book as well. I forgot. But anyway, it's an amazing book. Your chapter's amazing, and of course, we did the event there last 2 weeks ago in Atlanta. It was so good to see you in person. By the way, I thought that was cool.
I know. I
Yeah,
know. I love that we get to do in person stuff. You're going to be joining the next program, right? To write the whole book?
I am, yeah. It's called Unapologetically Launched, and
Oh, yes, okay.
it's a program that includes both um, a solo book, which will be fascinating for me to do because that's something I've always wanted to do, as well as the potential to be speaking on a TEDx stage, which is pretty significant. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's
yeah,
gonna be amazing. I can't
yeah.
wait. And I can't wait to really share my keynote speech again. I
Mm,
mean, I know like your keynote speech was really good. What are
thank you.
your plans for doing more to do more of your keynote?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. That's a really good question. The opportunities in a small farming community might not be as big as perhaps metropolitan areas, but the good news is we sit right next to Lowell, Massachusetts,
Uh-huh.
which is a city. So the question is, who best is my audience for that? So I'm still mulling that over. I haven't really decided anything about
Well,
that yet.
there's virtual, John.
Well, see, that's why I need somebody like you to help me.
There's virtual, there's virtual summits that people are doing all the time. There's lots of opportunity.
Right. Yeah. As a matter of fact, that's something that I'm really thinking hard about, and I've been thinking hard about over the last few days is, coming up with some kind of marketing plan for myself because I think that's where I'm stymied a little bit. The creative work I can do. It's how do I get from point A to point B. So,
Yeah.
what about you though? I mean, how are you planning on using your speech?
So yeah, I mean, I plan on kind of listing it as a thing that I offer is like keynote speaking and then
Mhm.
also oh, what do they call those? Where the panel speaking, that type of thing.
Right.
I've been, open for a lot of speaking stuff for a while, but I'm probably just gonna, promote it a little bit more. I plan on reaching out to some summits and seeing like probably some more spiritual summits
Mhm.
and seeing, what opportunities are there. I want to get on more podcasts, so that's going to be definitely something that I'll pursue is some podcasts. So just kind of like some of that networking stuff. I have been really wanting to dip my toe in my local community as well. My self-consciousness comes out because there there's a lot of like I don't know, religious stuff, I
Mm.
guess. Here it's very but I mean that's also could be my own thinking. So
Yeah, yeah, you really don't know. And I'm here's my Bigfoot, and he can even raise his arms for those that
yeah, I
can't
know.
see.
I
I'm
was gonna say we
sorry.
have to like mention how amazing your Halloween like headdress,
My Halloween
costume,
headdress,
whatever
yeah.
is
Yeah, he's gotta come off
tonight.
the making my head sweat. Oh my heavens.
But
Oh
that's
heaven.
for are you're gonna wear him tonight when you do your candy?
Well, you know what? It's supposed to get into the 30s this evening, so that might just be because that is, like, super hot to wear, so I might end up just wearing him tonight. So, um,
Well, at least he got to show us all. Got
yeah,
to be
yeah.
the star of the show for a moment.
That's right, yeah, that's my Bigfoot hat. So, right before we got on, we were talking a little bit because, folks, when I do this show, I don't write questions out beforehand. And that's just something that I think there's nothing wrong with that approach, but I think sometimes it's more fun just to have a simple conversation and see where it goes. Like maybe talking about how my hair now is not going to set flat on my head because I had the stupid hat on, whatever. But we were talking a little bit about, what do we want to focus on? And what caught my ear, of course, was that you mentioned, I think you asked something along the lines of, well, do you want to talk about some artistic things or some art related things? And that was curious to me because, you're known for, again, being the money goddess, right? But I think that based on what you said, you've got some other talents as well. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so, my art, it's funny because I don't know, it was a couple of years ago, we were all talking about like our art, and some people were talking about gardening, and some people were talking about cooking and like, their artsy thing that they go to. And I was like, I don't have an art that I do, but it hit me. I was like, oh, well, I like to crochet.
Hmm.
And, my journey into crochet is a little interesting because when I started this business, it was a couple of years before, 2020 happened. And then into 2020, um, I found myself in like massive burnout. Like I
Hmm.
was, working just insane hours. And I came to this point, I remember thinking that it's like, I need something else to do that is not work.
Right.
it's
Right.
it's not work, and that that I can just, like do something that I'm not going to somehow try to sell or turn into a business, because I will tell you, like, I am definitely the entrepreneur of the family.
Mhm.
I see things and I'm like, "Oh my god, you could make that a business."
Right.
I mean, we're to the point where, like, we have our fifth wheel, and I'm like, we can rent it out, like, we can do, like, Airbnb stays, like, yeah, we can make it a business. and
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm always thinking, like, I wanna have a farm, and I'm the one that's like, "You can make that a business."
Mhm.
Well, I needed something that I wasn't gonna make a business, that I was only gonna do as a hobby. My husband has definitely tried to convince me that I can sell my crochet and I can turn, and I'm like, "Nope, my crochet, it's only hobby."
Mhm.
So I have continued for the last couple of years just crocheting, and I learned from YouTube.
Mm.
I go on YouTube videos, and I mean, they have just people just from all over. I mean, and some of them are even in different languages.
Right.
So that was definitely part of, my journey to, just kind of cutting out that everyday hustle and that everyday grind. Was like, I needed something else to do, and
Right.
I turned to crochet. Sadly, I will say though, I broke my hand when I was really little, and so what's happened is, like, my wrist has gotten really sore from doing it, so I can't really crochet anymore. The past couple months, I've like haven't been able to. So really, like, one of the things I'd like to do is to really focus on healing, like healing, because, like, I don't know if you listen to Joe Dispenza at all, and he talks about, like, how we can actually heal our body.
Right. Right.
And so I'd really like that's something that I'd like to start working on doing over the next couple of years, to start to intentionally do some of these things
Mhm.
to create, like, the cartilage or whatever it is that happens in the body, to help my body, like, heal, because I do want to get back to it.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell by the way you're talking about it that it really was a joyful thing or is a joyful thing,
It
so,
is, because I see
you
these
know.
patterns and I'm just like, I want to make that. Um, and it's just, it's like, but it's funny, like, I've crocheted so many things that is my everyday life. Like, I crocheted a thing that I put my computer on, and, like, I crocheted these little things for my cups and for my pens and for my, it's just like random little things I crochet, and it brings me joy to be able to just sit here and crochet and kind of just zone out in
Right.
Netflix or whatever. It's my way to just disconnect, which
Yeah.
I think really and truly that's what art is there for us.
It is, and also Amanda McWhirter, she says, "Hey."
Hi, Amanda.
So that's awesome. Hi, Amanda. Thank you for
I know
watching today. Yeah.
Amanda. I was actually on her podcast not too long ago.
Oh, cool. That sounds really good.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you also do sewing as well. Did you crochet that, by the way?
I did actually. It's this little it actually it comes off, it's like comes around the little thing here, but it actually has a bottom. So most of them that you see are just this outer part, but I actually put a bottom on mine so
Right.
that when it comes up here, it doesn't, like, because my actually originally made it for my stepmom who had, like, arthritis and stuff. So
Mhm.
when you go to grip the cup, it's gonna kind of come up. And
Right.
so I created it with a bottom. So I made it, like, friendly for people who have problems with their hands
Yeah,
and
I
want to
just
still.
yeah, and you can make a fortune off that, I'm just saying.
I
Oh, wait a minute,
know.
wait a minute.
See.
What am I doing? Looks like Deidre Vanko's on, and she says hi.
Hi, Deidre.
She says hi too.
Yes, I know her too. Thank
That's
you for
awesome.
joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much. So sewing as well, though, you mentioned that too. So crochet and sewing, right?
Yes. So I haven't sewed in a really long time. My grandma actually taught me how to sew when I was in my 20s. And I can't even remember. I just remember my grandma. We would always, when I was younger, my grandma and I would help her cut patterns. So, you put the material on the we'd put the material on the floor, we'd
Mhm.
lay the pattern out, and then you pin the patterns. Now there's simpler things, but this was back in the day. We'd pin the pattern and then you'd cut it out and then she'd do the sewing.
Right.
But it was one of those things that I did with my grandma to connect with her. And so I have a lot of fond memories of like when I sew, I always remember, my grandma, that's something
Mhm.
that she like has passed on to me is sewing.
Yeah, I started to, it was my sister-in-law had come over because I had this idea of wanting to sew my own costumes because my other sister-in-law is really decent at it, and her and her husband used to dress up as like Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and one year he was like the hamburger helper hand, and she sewed all this, and I thought,
Oh, wow.
I mean, and me, having grown up in this world of wanting to always, because I always when I was a kid, I always wanted to make movies. That was my big thing. I loved going to the drive-in. I loved going to the cinema, and I wanted to initially get into the makeup field, creating movie monsters and stuff.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was, and I could tell you some stories sometime on some of the goofy things we used to do, but part of it then was, seeing my sister-in-law do these cool costumes, like, well, that would be cool. I want to learn how to sew. So my other sister-in-law came over one time to teach my wife and I. We each bought a sewing machine. We went out and bought, I think, the brother sewing machines. All ready to do all this amazing stuff. And of course, my sister-in-laws start with something simple, a pillowcase or a pillow. And of course, the first thing I did was make a freaking shirt. I'm like, I'm not going to start at the bottom. I'm going to start with a shirt. So, and that, but I made it, and a matter of
Yeah.
fact, last year and this year, I made, the shirts for the Behind the Power event. Um, but even
Oh,
that
you
is,
actually made those?
yeah, the 3
Oh,
shirts I
I thought you
wore.
had ordered them. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
No, I made them.
amazing. I did
Yeah.
not realize that you had actually made those. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah.
impressive, John.
Thank you. But there's
That
something
is impressive.
there's something cool about that too, making things and because that's a skill I don't know. I don't really know if too many people learn to sew much anymore. It's almost like typing. I mean, do we even teach that in schools anymore? I don't even know.
I don't know, but my typing, well, like keyboarding, it's
Keyboarding,
keyboarding really. And
keyboarding.
yes, there is some type of keyboarding that does take place. I actually took keyboarding in college.
Mm.
Interesting. That was another one of my like I had to take, you know, classes. And it taught me kind of like, that placement of my fingers. And your keyboard has that little notch on it. And so a lot of people, I mean, I didn't realize. I was like, okay. And so now I type quite fast now, because it's
Mhm.
like every day of my life. But it's so funny. I even watch people like they do this little like type with the two and three
Yep.
fingers. And I'm just like, well, that's impressive that you can do the three little fingers, but you know,
Mhm.
maybe they don't. I don't know.
I Yeah, I mean,
Do you type with like all of your fingers?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I learned how to type, I think it was, I don't know, 10th or 11th grade, on the old typewriters.
Okay.
I don't think they were manual though. I'm pretty sure that they were electric typewriters at the time, so I'm not that old, right? We had electric typewriters in my day. But then, of course, after I joined the Coast Guard, we had to copy Morse code, and well,
Oh, yeah,
one of
okay.
the easiest ways to copy it was to, as the codes coming in, you would just sit at the keyboard and do it. So
Okay.
I've been typing for a very, very long time.
Okay, that's
So
impressive too.
yeah, I use all my digits for
I
that.
always wondered how that worked. I mean, I know, you learn it, but like anything else, but it always just impressed me watching movies how they could, you know,
Oh,
know what's being
the
said
dots and
on the
dashes.
dee
Yeah.
dee 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 dee.
Yeah, I thought about that the other day because I'm trying to teach myself piano from YouTube.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
it's and
That's
it's
how I learned crochet.
yeah, because I mean I've got short stubby fingers, which some people would say, "Oh, your fingers are fine," and they're fine. They do what they're supposed to do. But when it comes to like playing guitar, which I also love to do, and then of course learning the piano, it helps to have slightly longer fingers. I'm not going to lie.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But then I thought back to this Morse code business, and where I made this parallel is, if I could learn how to listen dots and dashes and interpret that, then there's no reason why I can't, with a little time and patience, figure that out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
Well, I
uh,
do think that there's a fine line between, just kind of figuring out that like, this isn't really for me versus like kind of pushing through it.
mhm,
Cuz I actually did try to do when I was younger, maybe 10, 11 years old, a lady cuz I knew how to read. I know how to read well, I used to know how to read the notes, right? But I couldn't figure out why. It was difficult for me to figure out like you've got these 10 fingers and then you've got the 10 notes and then it's constantly moving and try to figure that out. Like for me, it was too complicated. And I remember just getting so frustrated with it. But now that I'm older, I understand my learning style and that's just too many like moving pieces
mhm.
that I'll probably never really, unless I kind of like try really hard. But it's just one of those things that I'm just never going to be naturally like any good at or like it's easy for me because there's just too much involved. So, I do think that art can be one of those things that there's that delicate balance between kind of like, trying it out and then
Right.
realizing it's not for you or kind of pushing through or whatever.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing. I don't know if I've looked at it that way before because, there are many things I've tried in the past that I'm clearly not doing now. So why is that, right? Is it because it was too hard, or was it because I didn't have the patience, or was it because I simply wasn't interested in it?
Yeah.
Right. So, but that's a good point. I think, for me with the piano, and I'll just pick on that since that's my latest thing that I'm doing is, and I think it was the same thing with sewing. It was the same thing with, uh, like the artwork that I'm doing, and there's some pieces here that I'm working on. If I feel like I really, really, really want to do it, that even if it's hard, I'll still do it.
Right,
Right.
right.
But you're right. I think there are some things that just don't feel like me. Like
Yeah, it's
sculpting.
like
I
it
can
dives into just too much complexity for how our brain works.
Yeah, it's like sculpting. Like I've tried sculpting, like even with that Sculpey dough with modeling clay, I cannot sculpt. I mean, I've got something in my cabinet, I'll show you sometime. It is just this goofy little thing that I did. I just don't seem to have a knack for it. And that's okay. That's really okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. I think we have to find something that we enjoy doing
Yeah.
that gives us a type of can you hear my dog?
I can. He sounds
He's
lonely.
mad at me.
Oh, okay. I mean, it makes sense.
That it gives us this type of relief from kind of like our
Yeah.
everyday, thing that we're doing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think to a large degree, it should be something we enjoy doing. I mean, there's obviously hard parts in everything we do, but really just coming back to is it something that I enjoy doing? And I really think that this kind of feeds into a little bit of the money stuff that I help people with a lot too is looking at like do I enjoy this? Because I think the problem is that we get into or at least for myself and a lot of people that I know, we get into this place of where well we're doing all the things that everyone told us we should be doing to
Mhm.
have this happy thriving life and we get to this place and we're like okay I'm not thriving, I'm not happy, I'm not fulfilled. And so it's really coming back to this place of, okay, like what's working and what's not working, but then also looking at these pieces that do bring us joy.
Yeah.
Um, and is that something that you can do kind of outside of your 9 to 5 that helps give you this type of joy or this type of fulfillment, or is it really something that you need to make a pivot to incorporate this and to make more of your everyday life? And
Yeah.
it definitely can be like we have to think about this financially too, because the problem ends up being with our finances is that we end up making money from a place that doesn't feel good and doesn't feel fulfilling. And so it creates this imbalance in Number 1, how we make the money, like, it creates this imbalance in maybe how much money we can make, and honestly, how much money we end up really having this capacity to earn. I mean, if you think about it, if you're doing a job that you don't really like and you don't really enjoy, you're only really gonna progress to a certain level in it. This is no different than, let's say you're running your business and you don't feel fully fulfilled, or you don't feel, you know, like it's really providing much joy, or you enjoy it that much anymore. It's only gonna fill you up so much. And so
Mm.
you're only really gonna be able to make so much money at it. You might be really good at it, but there will become a place where you'll cap out because you're not getting what you need from it,
Right.
which really turns around to when you're doing something you love and you're good at it, that's where you can really come from this heart-centered place and really start to make more money, that because you're coming from this heart-centered place. There's a whole kind of formula around it, but it's just to the point. Basically the point I'm trying to make is that you want to make sure that you do have things in your life that is providing you this type of joy, and art is definitely one of the ways you can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think, we're already at our half hour. I knew this time was gonna fly by super fast. And I would really like to go down and talk a little bit more about, um, you know, some of the difficulties I think that people have, making these transitions from perhaps this environment that doesn't bring them joy yet brings them the money, um, to to step into this new role of something that does bring you joy, but may not really bring in the income that you need, right? I think there's a balance there. In my opinion, there needs to be some kind of balance, at least in the short term, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's gonna be a transition, and that's the thing that I think social media has skewed, with these influencers and these
mhm,
pretty pictures on Instagram, is that, "Oh, just quit your 9 to 5, quit your 9 to 5, quit your 9 to 5," and the goal isn't to always quit your 9 to 5, and it's not necessarily even necessary to do that. You can definitely keep your 9 to 5, you can definitely keep your job, but you make these tweaks along the way.
right,
So, for me, it was not commuting. I created a situation where I didn't commute every day. So that felt more spacious. It
right,
could be a situation where maybe you move to a different department. Maybe you move to a different 9 to 5 job that you do the same thing and maybe you make the same money, but the environment's different, right?
right,
Maybe you So you start to make these adjustments along the way that start to ease up on, how you're feeling every day, ease up on, like, going to bed and feeling like, another day, right? So
right,
you start to, and I talk about this in my speech, where you start to question these things, like, what is feeling off? Where's there a disconnect between how I feel every day because I want to feel good, and why am I not feeling this way?
right,
There's so many things you can do in your personal life. For example, maybe it's the way that you load the dishwasher, you load and unload the dishwasher. I mean, I had this complete epiphany when I went to go visit my mom earlier this year. I watched her unload the dishwasher, and she has way too many dishes. And so
mhm,
it's like a chore for her to, like, load and, like, to get a plate out. There's like these 10 layers of different size plates, and I'm thinking to myself, if you would just get rid of some of your dishes, like, but it's I think that, right? Like, I'm
mhm,
not going to tell her that, but if you're in this iteration of your life where you're like, damn, everything feels really hard,
right,
start to, like, look at these little things, because what's going to happen along the way is you're going to start to be like, well, yeah, I this is like, this thing feels really hard. I mean, like, for me, it was my laundry. Like, laundry felt so freaking hard. So how can I make it a little bit easier? If
mm,
it's going to get groceries, okay, now we have this great thing where we can order groceries. Like, this is what it starts, and then it starts to kind of snowball into this effect of like, well, what if I were to do this with my career? What if I were to reach out to this person? And what it does is it actually starts to create what's called that reticular activating system in your brain, to where your brain actually starts to find solutions for you.
Right.
You're actually training your brain to say, hey, I want a new solution for making my job feel better. I want a solution for making when I come home to fix dinner. I want a new solution that feels better. And so you start to come up with, like, oh, you see a recipe on the internet, or like your friend talks about this, or whatever it is. All these things are happening, but the problem is our brain doesn't really know which one to focus on and which one to tell you, hey, you should listen to that. Hey, you should pay attention to that. And this is the exact thing that happens with our money and our finances and our career, is that we don't tell our brain, hey, there's something there. You should probably listen to it.
Right. And that's where coaching is essential.
Yeah, and that's where kind of like you're inside of the jar, and you
Hmm.
can't really see the label on the outside because you're inside of the jar, and that's where you kind of really need somebody to help
Right.
you kind of kind of read the outside of the jar, and then eventually get you to jump outside of the jar, that you're like, "Oh, now I can see what the label says." And that's really where that confidence comes in, and you're like, "Yeah, I am a badass. Yeah."
Yeah. So if people would like to reach out to you because they resonate with what you're saying, how would they do that?
Yes, so my website is heatherdoran.biz,
Okay.
and that kind of has all the places. I mostly hang out on Facebook and Instagram. But yeah, I mean, I have some free resources there.
Excellent.
Um, and there's a link on my website, but also probably on John's, where you can get a link to the book,
Hmm.
read the chapter. I have a resource that goes with my chapter. I think, did you have a resource that goes with yours?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, we should make you one, John.
I need a resource. Help me. Yeah. Um, well,
Yes, so that you can go there and you can kinda see all the things, from the website.
yeah, and folks, I did look at her website. I've looked at it a couple times actually. It's a very well-designed website, and it's got a good starting point. You can get a hold of Heather if you'd like her help, um,
Yes.
and I encourage
Oh,
you to
and I
do so.
am also having, a free training, if it's okay for me to share.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm also doing a free training next week on Thursday. It's called Become a Money Magnet, and that is also there on the website. So I
Okay.
would love for you to join in on the masterclass next week, where we'll be kind of diving into some of this stuff around your money, your beliefs around money, and really how you can start to reimagine this thriving life.
Wow, and it's at a good price too. So folks, take advantage of it. All right, Heather. Well, hopefully, we didn't go as far into the money as probably we could have, but that's okay because this has been an amazing conversation with you this Halloween night, and I really hope you'd consider coming on again
Yes,
because
this was fun.
yeah, it was a lot of fun. So next week, folks, we're gonna have a tattoo artist on, uh,
Ooh.
Bunny Rican.
Oh,
We
that's gonna be so
Yep,
fun.
she's currently actually, she's in Atlanta right now. She's, studying to do, what is it called? Medical
Yeah,
tattooing?
she's gonna be
Yeah.
doing medical, well, she actually just got her certification. She actually is gonna start practicing. Yeah, but it's medical tattoos for people who have, like, lost their breasts or had
Mhm.
breast cancer and all of that, to put, like, the medical tattooing of their nipple, and, so
Right,
they can feel and look like, have this body
right.
image, so
Yeah, it's gonna be an amazing conversation. So hopefully, folks, you'll tune in next Tuesday night. But for you, Heather, thank you so very much.
yes,
It's been a
thank
real
you.
pleasure talking to you. And again, happy Halloween, everyone. And I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Thank you so very much for joining me on the Art Talk podcast, where it's my goal to bring artists together to talk about their craft. If you'd like to join me for a conversation, please reach out via email at johncoleartist@gmail.com or by visiting my website at johnrobertcole.com. So until next time, keep crafting, painting, and inspiring others with your creativity. You make more of an impact then you know. See ya.